Good afternoon, Larimer County, and welcome to our February 5th, 2024 afternoon work session, Community Planning Infrastructure and Resources. We typically have these work sessions weekly. We have a rather packed agenda, so we'll begin by introducing ourselves. My name is John Kafalis, Commissioner from District 1. Joined by my commissioner colleagues, Kristen Stevens from District Number 2 and Jody Shattuck McNally from District Number 3. We're also joined by our esteemed County Manager, Lorinda Volker. And at this time, I believe I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner Kafalis. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Leslie Ellis, Community Planning Infrastructure and Resources Director. And we have a very full agenda today, as you can see, but we do anticipate that the first few items should be fairly quick updates and looking for a bit of feedback from you. So I'll quickly here turn it over to Amy White and Judy Calhoun to discuss the NOCO Humane Revised Animal Ordinance. Then we have Eric Tracy and Mark Peterson to talk about a state LOMA grant. He can tell you what that acronym stands for. And then the 2021 Estes Fire Code will be Eric Freed. And so each of those items should be 5 or 10 minutes or so. We want to make sure we reserve plenty of time to continue our discussion with Rebecca Everett on the community development work plan. So that'll probably take up the bulk of our time this afternoon. So I'll turn it over to Amy and
Thank
Judy.
you, Leslie, and welcome, colleagues.
Good afternoon, Amy White, Code Compliance Supervisor. Earlier this year, NOCO Humane reached out and said, hey, we need to update our ordinance. Could you help us with that? And since I've become the ordinance subject matter expert, we said, of course. So there's only a couple of substantive changes, and one is to update the name of the organization from Larimer County Humane Society to NOCO Humane. And then the other is to align more closely with the Colorado Revised Statutes in the administration of rabies and vaccinations. And Judy may touch on that, but it will allow the ordinance to mirror state law and mitigate the need to change the ordinance if the statutes change. And it's also there to allow veterinarians and shelters within Larimer County to follow practices for rabies vaccination as outlined in the Colorado Veterinary Practice Act. And then we did take the opportunity to revise some of the outdated language. So if you have questions, Judy Calhoun is the subject matter expert.
Amy, thank you very much. Judy, is there anything you'd like to add before we open it up to questions and comments?
I think the only thing that I'd like to add, and thank you, Commissioner Kafalis, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, and Commissioner Stevens, is that the rabies vaccination, aligning that with the Colorado Veterinary Practice Act, will allow a easier administration of rabies vaccines within shelters here in Larimer County, and will just remain then in alignment with any other changes that are made in the Practice Act regarding rabies vaccination administration.
Great. Thank you very much, Judy. It's nice to see you. Colleagues, do you have any questions, comments, observations for these folks? Yes, Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you both for your collaboration and work, and thank you, Judy, for the work you do. And I know it's been a big transition, but a really important work for this region. And just want to say my gratitude and thanks. And Amy, we didn't want to make you have another title as code ordinance person, but I do want to thank you for that in your diligence and just I will follow with your recommendations and feel like you guys really understand where we need to be, and so I support your recommendations.
Thank you, Commissioner. And so the next step is for us to do the first reading, which has been scheduled for February 26th. We'll do the publication piece of it, and then the second hearing will be March 25th. We'll do the publication, and then the ordinance will come back before you on the consent agenda at an admin matters.
So before we move on, I actually do have a question regarding the ordinance, and then maybe a little bit more clarification on the process that you just described, Amy. And is the official, so regarding the ordinance, as I read it and recall it, is the official name of your organization NOCO Humane. And if that is the case, then I think we're okay. If it's Northern Colorado Humane, then perhaps we need to change it.
No, the official name is indeed NOCO Humane.
Then I guess we're good there. Regarding the process, first reading generally requires an actual reading of the ordinance. If my memory serves me correct, this ordinance is a few pages long. What's going to happen? Are you going to work on your oratory, or are we going to record it, or what's going to happen there?
No, thank you for the question. I was going to get with Frank and hopefully summarize just the sections that have the updates so that I don't have to read the entire piece of that, but I haven't checked with the county attorneys yet to see if that's acceptable.
Here comes our Assistant County Attorney, right on time. Good afternoon, good sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Frank Haug from the County Attorney's Office. Because it's an existing ordinance that we're modifying, we don't have to reread the whole thing. We just have to read the parts that are being modified.
Thank you for clarifying. Then I won't bring popcorn and prepare for that. So I believe if there are no other questions or comments, we can move on to the next agenda. Thank you both so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thanks for taking
Right,
care of the little
changing of the
critters
guard here.
and the big critters.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce while
Yes.
we're getting plugged in?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mark Peterson, County Engineer, joined at the table by Eric Tracy from the Engineering Department as well. So engineering's been in the process of kind of keeping track of grant opportunities that are coming out through the bipartisan infrastructure law, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA. And so there is funding that's come out through the Bridge Investment Program. They made an advertisement at the end of 2023, and grant applications are due for planning grants February 19th, and a month later for implementation grants to actually do something on the ground. So one of the opportunities that's out there is to apply for state grants to provide some of the match funding. So Eric will kind of go quickly through what we've got in process there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Again, Eric Tracy with the Larimer County Engineering Department. We are here to talk to you about this state local match grant application, and that is tied to the federal grant that we're applying for. At the end of the discussion here, all I'm really looking for from you is a general okay to move forward with that grant application. That is a requirement on the application that we come in and discuss that with you. A little bit of background for the general public. This is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It's also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. That was put into effect in 2021, and I'm glad to report to you that the Larimer County Engineering Department, we are actively seeking after as much of that funding as we possibly can. Some examples of that are included here. The ones that are in black are grant programs that are managed through the state and the Metropolitan Planning Organization and the Transportation Planning Regions. However, the brown or reddish colored ones are ones that we are applying for directly through the federal grants.gov program. This one that we're talking about today is the Bridge Investment Program, the first on the list here. As you are well aware, one of the difficulties that we often encounter when applying for grants for large projects is most of the grants do require a local match. And when we're speaking about large projects, you know, talking about a 20% local match is a hefty amount. The Colorado Division of Local Affairs has a grant program that I've presented on here before that has invested some of the general fund money to help local authorities with that match requirement. And again, one of the requirements of that application is to present to you here today. The one that I have presented to you previously was the Safe Streets and Roads for All Safety Action Plan. We had applied for and received that grant, and I attempted to apply for this local match to cover our local match for that particular grant. We did hear back about a week or so ago. We were not selected for funding on that. The committee that reviewed that felt that Larimer County wasn't in a significant financial need for that small of an amount. We're asking for $60,000 to help with that local match. They wanted to apply it towards larger projects, and they really wanted to emphasize construction projects rather than planning projects. So we are attempting this again. We're in the process of applying for the Bridge Investment Program for the Monroe Bridge in Loveland. We are doing a benefit cost analysis at the moment to make sure that it'll be competitive moving forward. We've spoken with Loveland. We're ready to partner with them to do some of their project, which is a channel stabilization project, and include that within this project as well. We're anticipated to go to construction in January of 2025. The total cost for the project, including the bridge and the channel stabilization, is $3.7 million, and with a 20% local match, the local match requirement would be $740,000. We don't anticipate at this time requesting that full amount in the state application. We'll be analyzing that as we move forward in the application, but we wanted to present this to you and get your thoughts and consideration at this time. So if you have any questions, I can answer those, but again, what we're looking for is just a general okay to move forward.
Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you, Mark. Colleagues, do you have any questions, comments, observations regarding the LOMA application discussion? Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I had a question. So was this bridge was identified as something and it was in poor condition, or I can't remember what is a good, fair, poor? I don't remember how that works.
Yeah, it's on our inventory, and, it is an old rubble arch structure that really can't be rehabilitated. So we've been in the process of looking at design and going through that whole process. So it is a project that would be fundable. It's toward the point of being shovel-ready and eligible for grant funding, which is always a challenge that we have when we try to move forward local projects to take advantage of federal funding.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I remember that we do have those challenges, and I think everybody else has those challenges as well. So it's tricky too. People are like, isn't there all this money out there? And there is, but if you're not shovel ready, and it does take longer, sometimes adds cost to the project. So I think you all weigh carefully which projects you want to apply for. I'm certainly supportive. Yeah, I mean I know we have a lot of projects in the queue, so anything we can fund with someone else's other dollars besides the internal dollars we have is good. So I'm definitely supportive and appreciate you bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you. I've driven on this bridge a few times as a resident, but also with our tour with our director of Road and Bridge, Todd Jurgens. And so I believe this bridge is from the 1800s or early 1900s. It's pretty old.
It's an older structure. I don't know that we have a definitive date on it.
Yeah.
But you can see from the construction materials, it's again, rubble arch.
So, and I know this is one of those things there, the city has annexed all around it, but not the bridge, so it's kind of something we need to do together. So I'm in full support, and as you know, I will do what I can to support you all, and I'm glad that we're addressing this, so thank you. Or trying to address this.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you, Commissioner. I, too, am in support of the general direction that you've described. I have two questions. One of them is regarding this particular bridge investment project and the local match. Is that one we would share with perhaps the city of Loveland? Do we have to come up with that entire, whatever the 20% is, do we have to come up with it, or is that a cost sharing with the city of Loveland?
It's a partner project right now. So yeah, we're sharing the local match on the construction. And again, Loveland has in conjunction with the bridge, a channel stabilization kind of flood protection project that they would be providing the funding for as well.
Thank you, Mark. So does that mean the dollar amount that's been suggested for the local match, 20%, 740,000, we would share that cost with the city of Loveland?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. My other question is regarding safe routes and roads, I believe it is. Is the funding intact for the expansion of County Road 17 Shields from Willocks to 287? I think they're still doing easement work or utility work. Is that funding intact?
Yeah, that project has been bid and is going to construction. So previously, they've been focused on utility relocation work, and that was going on through last winter, but that project is out to be constructed this year. The full road widening and
Great,
the center turn lanes over portions of that roadway.
great. That's good news. Thank you, Mark. I believe, yes, of course.
This is
Sorry.
not pertaining to this project, but just a question. Because it somewhat, well, it does relate to safety, is the 287, or not, 287 project, right? Is that the project where, not 287? Yeah, 287, right? The North 287 project. Wasn't CDOT doing a safety study, and when would we have results back on that? Or have we heard anything back on what projects they might?
We've received a draft copy.
Oh, we did,
If-
okay.
Well, we've actually scheduled a work session with you folks
Oh, we
coming
do?
up this month.
Oh,
Yeah,
look
so
at
it
that.
was-
So I just teed you up for,
It was
talking about
based
that.
on CDOT's availability to come with their consultants, so that has been scheduled. It is on your calendar.
okay, perfect, great. Well, then I'll look forward to that conversation.
And this is the realignment of 287 and the particular intersection that we had wanted to, no, it's something different.
No, this is actually, as part of the Upper Front Range, the Colorado Department of Transportation had allocated $16 million to look at safety improvements on North US 287, pretty much extending from Ted's Place up to the Wyoming state line. They focused on areas north of the new Glade Reservoir highway alignment, because really Ted's Place will become part of State Highway 14 as opposed to 287. So they've had a consultant studying what improvements could be made along that roadway to improve safety.
Thank you for clarifying that, and I look forward to that work session, as I know one of the issues that the Livermore community has come up with is public safety, and, right there by the intersection of County Road 74E and 287, so thank you. Anything else, colleagues, or Lorenda, anything? Well done, oh, yes.
I'm sorry. No, is there a way we can get this set separately? With like,
Oh, electronically, or
with the picture.
certainly?
Yep.
Yep.
This would be helpful for work. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. If there are no other questions or comments, then we appreciate all the good work that you folks do. Have a nice day. My goodness. 2021 Estes Valley Fire Code. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As the Commissioners, I believe, know, the way...
Pardon me, good sir, who are you?
Last I checked, I was Eric Freed, County Building Official. Sorry. Title's been changed. Anyway, in Colorado state law, it says that for a fire code to apply in the unincorporated part of a fire district, the Board of Commissioners has to approve the administration of that code. Code is adopted by the fire district itself, but we approve them administering the code in the county part of the Estes Valley Fire District. Estes Valley is a little behind the other local fire departments, but late last year they adopted their 2021 International Fire Code. And I sent you a copy of what their amendments. There's very few in there, but there are two that are of substance that I wanted to discuss with you. And it has to do with the question of whether fire sprinklers are required in single-family homes built under the residential code. That's in the residential code. We've amended it out over many years. The Lyons Fire District, last time they came through a few years ago, they wanted to require sprinklers in homes within their district because they felt they were pretty rural, they were understaffed, it would take a long time to respond. And now Estes Valley Fire feels the same thing. When the town of Estes Park adopted their residential code last year, they simply did not amend out the requirement for a fire sprinkler. So in adopting the 2021 IRC as is, fire sprinklers are now required inside the town for new homes. And at first, the fire district requested that I go back and amend our residential code to have a new set of requirements only in the Estes Valley to require sprinklers. But I thought that was a bad idea for a couple of reasons. We don't want to have different building codes for different parts of the county. We've already had a situation where we had different county codes for Estes Valley from everywhere else, and that was problematic. We're trying to make, all our codes be the same. So and also if we adopt a new code, rather than allowing the fire department to administer their code, that triggers the requirement under state law to adopt several state model codes, which we're not ready to do yet. So instead, I suggested that they go back to their board and make a couple of amendments to put the requirement for sprinklers for single-family homes, two-family homes, and townhouses into their fire code. And that was after consulting with county attorney's office. We felt it was better to actually put it in the fire code because then they're administering that. We're not administering that. So they actually went back. That's why the record of proceedings is from January 10th, where they actually had originally adopted this last year. And they made a couple of amendments to make it clear that even homes built under the residential code within their fire district would have to have a fire sprinkler. The permit, the plan review, the inspection of the sprinkler would go through the Estes Valley Fire Department. Other than that, there's very little amendments in their code. It's a very clean packet. So my question to you is, let me say one other thing. When we adopted our 21 code, rather than going back piecemeal and having to amend it for different fire districts, we put in kind of a placeholder that says fire sprinklers are required in the Lyons Fire District and any other fire district as designated by the Board of Commissioners. So it would just be a matter of the Board of Commissioners saying, yes, we're okay with there being a fire sprinkler requirement in the Estes Valley Fire District. So that's my question to you. Are you in support of that? They feel the same challenges that Lyons had. They have a couple of professional people. In fact, they have a new chief. But their response time is slow. Some of their roads are pretty bad. Some of the places in the Estes Valley Fire District, it's going to take a long time to get there. So they want sprinklers to be required for new homes. If the board is okay with that, then I will put their fire code through at an admin matters meeting on consent at the nearest convenience. If the board was concerned with it or had questions, I would invite the Estes Valley Fire District personnel to come in here and talk to you directly and explain why they feel that they need sprinklers to be put in new single-family homes.
Thank you, Eric. Colleagues, do you have any questions, comments, observations? Commissioner?
I'm supportive. I understand the challenges and the response times. We've looked at those quite a bit over the last 2 years, so I'm supportive of that.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yeah, can I just ask a question? So if someone then is to build a house in this area, they're this is the codes that they would understand that these are the codes, these are the county codes, and then this is the fire department's sort of separate code that they would fall under, right? Is that how that works?
We make it clear to them when they come in now, if they're in Lyons, we explain that they have to go to Lyons and get a sprinkler permit. If they're in Wellington, Wellington wants there to be sprinklers for larger homes. We inform them that they need to talk to the Wellington Fire Department. So we would do the same thing. We wouldn't issue our permit until they'd gone and gotten a permit through Estes Valley Fire for the sprinkler, though that wouldn't be our permit, but we work closely with the fire districts.
Yeah, thank you for explaining how that process works. So I just, so there's really, we would be informing them, but not administering that process. Okay,
Right. The sprinkler
so-
permit itself would be through the fire district.
okay.
But we wouldn't final our building permit until they'd passed final on the fire district sprinkler permit to make sure it gets done.
So have we had any in the Lyons district that we've had to?
We've had- yeah.
We've had
Yeah.
several that, and nobody balks or, I mean, I defer to the fire departments to they know what needs they have and they know their response time and the challenges that they have. So I certainly want to support them. I just wondered if anybody questioned it at all.
We have had people question why they have to do it because it's a substantial cost, and we try to explain the fire department's thinking and say, but if you really have questions, you need to talk to your fire district because they feel like they need to have sprinklers in order to provide adequate services. But yeah, people are not necessarily happy about the extra cost.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I am in support of doing this, so thanks.
I have a couple of questions. One is, well, and you may have explained this before, Eric, and I may have not heard everything. Please clarify the role of the county in administering these fire codes, because ultimately it's up to the fire protection district to actually implement them. Could you explain that again, please, sir?
So it's the fire district that adopts the fire code and enforces the fire code. But under state law, the county has to essentially consent to them administering their fire code in the unincorporated county part of their district. So we sort of collaborate with them. It's their code. But as Commissioner Stevens has referenced, we work with them. So we let people know that there are requirements, additional requirements in the fire district. They need to get a permit. They need to get an inspection from the fire district. So we're a partner, but it's their code, and they're administering their code.
Thank you. Just a couple more. Maybe I'll combine them so it'll be like one big question with parts. Regarding the requirement that Lyons Fire District and I guess Estes Valley, are there any square footage? In other words, a house over a certain square footage needs to have a fire sprinkler. If it's a small house, does it still need to have a fire sprinkler? Secondly, is that requirement in place if there is adequate water supply for fire protection, like a hydrant within a certain distance? And I think, thirdly, maybe you could touch on the nexus between the extra cost of putting in a sprinkler system and housing affordability. Thank you, sir.
In neither Lyons nor Estes do they have a size trigger. Every new house requires a sprinkler system. And obviously, the cost of the sprinkler is going to be a lower percentage of the cost of a big house than it will be for a small house. So the cost in a small house is smaller, but there's certain fixed costs you can't get away from. What were the other? That's the problem with multiple.
Of course, regarding fire hydrants, if they're in proximity, and then perhaps a comment about the nexus between these extra costs and housing affordability.
Right. I'll take the last one first. Obviously, the additional cost makes houses a little bit less affordable. So it's a judgment as to whether the added safety you get from putting the sprinkler in is worth the additional cost. The other question is, in both Lyons and Estes Valley, they're in the wildfire hazard area. So a fire that starts in a home could conceivably spread to a much larger area. So there's that to consider as well. It's just a straight up requirement, which is actually the way the residential code is written. If it's a new home, you put a sprinkler in. It doesn't say unless there's a fire hydrant within a certain distance. That usually comes up through development review when you all are looking at a whole subdivision and you say, well, there either has to be a sprinkler within 200 feet of each home. I mean, there either has to be a hydrant within 200 feet of each home or a sprinkler. But in the building code, it just says you install the sprinkler system.
Thank you. I believe those are all the questions I have, and I would concur with my colleagues, to bring this to consent agenda, administrative matters.
Okay, then that is what I will do, and thank you for your time, commissioners.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Excuse me, I'm Rebecca Everett, Community Development Director, and I'm here to continue the conversation that we started last week about the work plan for the next year or two for the Community Development Department. And so I'll remind you of some of the projects that are already on the list that we've discussed as priorities for 2024, as well as some of the items that we had conversation about in terms of how they fit within the work plan or could fit within the work plan over the next couple of years. And then we've received, you have in your packet, memos and requests from multiple communities that I want to talk through with you and see what guidance you may have related to long-range planning for some of our rural center areas. So to begin, just a reminder of the projects that are already confirmed for 2024, some of which will extend into 2025. We did add one to the list that we realized was missing last week. It's the very bottom line there, oil and gas policy and enforcement. This is work that is ongoing that we will continue into 2024 and 2025, and we understand that it is a priority of the commissioner. So we want to make sure that was explicit on the list as an item that require some amount of ongoing effort from our department as well, in addition to work from the county, with the county attorney's office, our external consultant, as well as the health department. So based on what we heard last week, feedback from all of you, I've attempted to put this into an arrangement for 2024 that could potentially reflect the priorities that each of you expressed for the 2024 work plan and into 2025. And I've grouped them by theme or kind of overall project. And so we heard your feedback about the Strong Communities Grant being a priority to get started this year. And as staff, we feel like the best first project to start with as part of that grant is an intergovernmental agreement with Wellington related to growth, development, annexation. With transfer of density units program and other intergovernmental agreements possibly shifting into 2025 to make some room in the work plan for other items. On the long-range planning or community planning side, to balance some of these different priorities, we split one planning process in 2024, one in 2025. We can talk about some additional options or creative ideas that we might have as we get into the presentation here. We have some housing work that's related to the housing code audit from last year that's ongoing, and there was a question of whether we pause that work or continue and bring that to the finish line, and heard some direction from you all to wrap some of those projects up, so those could fit into 2024, along with a focus on the lighting code, which would be, just to be clear on scope, that would cover the land use code portion of the lighting code conversation. So looking at how the land use code applies to new development as it relates to outdoor lighting. So rather than getting into conversations about enforcement or what to do with existing lighting, would focus on new lighting moving forward. And then finally, we wanted to look at special events and see how we could break that project out over a couple of years, prioritizing a better system for more efficient and consistent processing of permits and better coordination between our referral agencies with a new software system this year, and looking at code amendments in 2025. So this is just a potential layout of how the work plan could shape up based on the feedback that we heard last week. And I'll move us along into the character area plan, sub-area plan conversation, but happy to revisit this slide and talk about how parts and pieces could fit together at any time. So this is another just reminder, a slide that we used last week as well, but bringing it back to the forefront. So we've received requests from several communities who are interested in a more focused long-range planning effort for their rural center. And some of those communities have submitted formal requests that are in your packet, but we've also heard from other rural centers and other communities throughout the county over the past several years since the comprehensive plan conversations about an interest in this concept. We do have budget for this year, and we had provided some potential prioritization criteria for your consideration as you think about which planning efforts may take more of a precedence over others. One criteria that we added to the list as we continue to think about this over the last week is at the very bottom, the number of people benefiting from a project is another potential consideration that you could think of. There are some projects that may have a wider benefit or benefit more county residents than others. Not the only criteria to consider, but something that could be kept in mind. So as I mentioned, your packet includes requests from 3 community groups that have provided memos. There are actually 4 memos in there, so I'll explain that. But we received a memo from the LaPorte Area Planning Advisory Committee requesting a sub-area plan update. I'll go through each of these requests. Red Feather Lakes Planning Advisory Committee also submitted a memo requesting a plan update. And then we've received memos from 2 groups within the Livermore area that relate to a request for a character area plan. So one group advocating for a character area plan and another group expressing some concerns about planning or community conversations in that area. So walking through these at a summary level, you'll see this for each of the communities. I've identified who made the request, generally what was the nature of the request, and their justification behind it. So from the LaPorte Area Advisory Committee, the LAPAC, they've requested a comprehensive update to the 2004 LaPorte Area Plan with a specific focus on multimodal transportation planning and safety and options for transportation in that community, as well as a request to better align zoning with the land use that's discussed in that plan and getting a little bit closer together there. Justification includes the changes and growth that has occurred in Fort Collins and changes in the community over the last 20 years. The general outdated nature of the plan, it being 20 years old, and so the data and planning information is old at this point. And then finally, accounting for potential impacts of Glade Reservoir and the Highway 287 future realignment as well. The request from the Red Feather Lakes Planning Advisory Committee was somewhat similar to the LaPorte request in that they are also requesting an update to the Red Feather Area Plan, which was adopted a couple years after the LaPorte Plan in 2006. The Red Feather Committee is also interested in a better baseline understanding of what the community currently looks like and the current values and priorities, recognizing that while the community hasn't grown much, there has been a change in residents and population in that area that may have changed some of the preferences and priorities over time. They would also like to consider expanding the plan boundaries to include more than just the immediate Red Feather area. And as you all are well aware, there are challenges related to infrastructure and natural hazard resiliency, and also an interest in traffic safety, community health, and other topics in that area. And the justification is primarily based on changed population and outdated information in that area. Though when I say changed population, I don't necessarily mean growth. The population itself in Red Feather has remained very stable over the last 20 years. Finally, the request from a group of Livermore residents, and I do want to distinguish because we've received feedback from a lot of residents in Livermore expressing different opinions related to what character means in that area, what growth potential, what some of the impacts of growth might have on that area. And so we know that there is interest in community conversation about the future of the area, but different perspectives on whether a character area plan is necessary at the moment. But the request from a focused group in that area is for a character area plan that would be centered around the Forks intersection at Highway 287 and 74E, really looking at some of the traffic safety and infrastructure challenges, water quality and water supply in that area that's covered by the Water Association, as well as a desire to anticipate some of the changes that might be coming with a realignment of 287 and how that might impact visitor traffic in that area. And There are some significant water quality and water supply issues as well as opportunities in that area. And if new water supply were to be identified in the Livermore area, it could generate demand for more development or the potential for more development and growth in that area. And so some of the desire expressed by the community members up there is to get out ahead of any potential growth pressures with some character area planning. So, I didn't realize there was animation here. Okay, what did I do? We've looked at how some of these requests could form into a work plan for 2024 and thinking about what some of the trade-offs or options might look like, and have also been coordinating with our county engineer to understand the scope of the transportation master plan, some other projects that are already programmed for 2024 to see how we might leverage some of those planning efforts as well. So this is kind of shown as an either or up here. We could use the funding that we have and the staff capacity that we have to do a deep dive into one community. For example, LaPorte or Red Feather to do a comprehensive update to the sub-area plan in one of those areas. Alternatively, we could take a more targeted approach where we focus on certain projects or actions or items in each community, but in a more focused or targeted way. So for example, there is an opportunity with the Transportation Master Plan to do a more specific transportation analysis and transportation plan for the LaPorte area as part of that larger transportation planning effort. It wouldn't address all of the requests that the LAPAC requested, but it would address the primary concern that we've heard them express. We could look at a character area plan for Livermore, staying focused on land use and the area around the Forks intersection, also looking to align with traffic safety analysis and other transportation work that's happening. And those two projects, LaPorte and Livermore, if we were to package them this way, would probably need to be staggered from a staff capacity standpoint. So one could start earlier in the year, one could follow later in the year, but we could likely work on both in 2024. And then for Red Feather, there are also several projects that are still underway up there. The wastewater study, discussions around the public restroom, the centerline study, and perhaps wrapping those studies up, getting those efforts to the finish line would potentially add more value than starting a new project on top of those at the same time. So that's for your consideration and for your guidance. This is my last slide, so I just wanted to present that there are options, there are ways we could try to creatively put together a work plan that helps to meet as many different needs or requests that we're hearing across the county as we can. And also we can continue to think into 2025 and what types of budget requests we may put in for 2025 or what other projects might be of importance as we get toward the end of this year. So thank you, and I welcome your feedback.
Thank you, Rebecca. Colleagues, do you have questions or feedback? Commissioner, do you want to start?
For area plans, sub-area plans, I think we have some, but are they for long-term, is this a long-term plan or a short-term plan? We just got done, is it last year? They're all starting to blend, Leslie, that we did the comprehensive plan for Estes Valley and town of Estes. That was 20 years old. And I saw Jose yesterday or Saturday, by the way, he says hi. And I'm wondering, if it's that of a impactful vision plan for that long of a period, doing a more, it seems to go an inch deep and a mile long and cover a lot of ground might not be as beneficial as having a really in-depth, well thought out area plan. Am I thinking that way? Because it feels like if we're kind of trying to look at 3 different areas in 1 year, that seems for me like a lot of work, and maybe we don't do as a thorough analysis or reflective for that area. I'm just curious. Am I making my question clear? I'm just thinking out loud sometimes.
Yes, no, I think I understand.
Could you paraphrase so that I want to make sure I understand?
Sure.
Please.
So I hear the question on maybe two questions in there. One is kind of about what is the longevity of some of these plans, and how often maybe should they be updated? And then a second question on kind of what is the value of focusing on a specific topic or item in an area rather than doing that deep dive, and what gains the community more lasting value. Okay, so in terms of the longevity of plans, the shelf life really varies for plans, and it kind of depends on how much change is happening in a community or an area of a community. And so, Estes Valley, for example, is an area that's experiencing a lot of growth and tourism pressure and affordable housing challenges, and it's a pretty dynamic environment where there's a lot going on. So you would likely want to keep that plan up to date more regularly as conditions change. An area like Red Feather, for example, hasn't experienced a lot of growth or land use change over time. And so that the vision potentially may stay stable for a longer period of time, and and the issues may remain the same for a longer period of time. And so updating a plan may not be as urgent. It may have a longer shelf life in that sense. But there is kind of a judgment call to be made there. In terms of the kind of mile long, inch deep, or the deep dive, there is probably value at some point in doing a deep dive update of both the Red Feather Plan and the LaPorte Area Plan. Whether that time is now or whether that's the highest priority right now is really up to you all. But we can get at some of the community challenges in other ways. And so if the majority of a plan is still pretty relevant, but there's one issue or one topic that requires a lot more work, there could be a lot of value in that rather than updating the whole plan.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Stevens, thoughts?
Yeah, just a few thoughts. First of all, we heard obviously some conflicting information from Livermore, and so I think that I guess before we would commit to doing a character area plan, I would kind of want to resolve that if possible with the residents. So I don't know. That's why I wouldn't be in a hurry to do something that not everybody's on board with, and. For residents in Livermore kind of objecting it's not a huge percentage of population, but it is a decent enough number that, of people that are normally engaged that I would want to listen to their concerns. I don't mind the idea of just kind of starting some of these plans where it makes sense. So I am a little worried because it still feels like there's a lot of stuff on the work plan. With the first list you had, and then this list, and then adding, I guess those sub-area plans or anything. I guess I'm hoping that you really feel like that this is doable, because I don't want us to get, in over our heads, or for your staff to, start feeling like, oh my gosh, we took on too much. This is too big of a chunk. So. I kind of like the idea of getting started with everybody, maybe just focusing in on aspects of a plan for these communities, because at least we'll be starting the work, versus just going with one sub-area or one character area plan, because I still think there's some work that maybe needs to be done around engaging the community. And so diving right into the plan without doing some of that work feels like, focusing on the transportation for LaPorte area, if we decide to go forward with Livermore, maybe centering it around the Forks, and there again, some of the transportation work that's being done. And then, I don't know, but I like that better than just starting a full plan with somebody. I think just doing some of the legwork in advance makes sense.
Thank you, Commissioner. Could we go to the a slide that pertains to the deep dive or targeted? I have a couple of questions related to that. And Well, first of all, I think, Commissioner Stevens, I agree that there's definitely, at this point, there's some difference of opinion regarding what is a character area plan, what does it actually mean, and does it lock you into a particular pattern of growth? So we've had informal conversations with Rebecca and others that one potential next step would be to have a community conversation up there that would be commissioner-led and having some staff that provide some expertise. So I think you're absolutely right that before we make any kind of commitment, there has to be buy-in, and I think there has to be a good understanding. That said, in general, I'd be more supportive of figuring out the targeted approach on the two sub-area plans and potentially the character area plan with Livermore, depending on how this next month or so goes with it, further conversations. I don't know what the status is, if the Tahosa Valley folks have expressed any interest or anything in writing. Regarding targeted plans, I guess a question or two that I would have there, Rebecca, if you're still following me, and that is, what exactly does that mean? Because I think we've had different discussions about what is a targeted plan. So, for example, when we've had the discussions up at Red Feather, we talked about updating the community vision, updating the demographics and things of that nature. Is that what we're talking about? Because I think it would be helpful to know what's doable if we could have some agreement on, if we agree with the approach on the right, exactly what is the targeted plan. And the last comment I'll make, and thank you for listening, and that is I think we have to do something, because both LaPorte and Red Feather have been somewhat clamoring for something that they could engage in. And if we just say, well, we're not going to do anything, or not even revisit the community vision and some of these demographic things or the transportation piece, I think we may lose some of our PACs, and maybe that's the way it needs to go. So I would offer that as well. I'll stop talking now.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to try to talk a little bit about scope and make sure that it's clear what assumptions we would have as staff, and putting some of this up here. For the LaPorte item, if we were to partner with Mark and his team on the transportation master plan and a transportation analysis, it would be solely transportation focused. There wouldn't be a land use and zoning component to it, but we could look at bike mobility, pedestrian mobility, traffic safety and speeds, potentially transit and how that relates to the LaPorte area. So looking at all modes of transportation and how they interact in the LaPorte area. And I invite Mark to come up and correct me if I misstate any or overcommit in any way. But that's a potential that would be very transportation focused.
Question really?
Yes, please.
No, thank you. That's very helpful, and I think that's going to be critical that we're all in agreement. What does it mean if we go down this path? Would that not include, both LaPorte and Red Feather is revisiting the vision? It seems like that should be, well, I shouldn't assume anything, but just focusing on updating the vision and perhaps the demographics, would that be part of a targeted plan, or are we adding too much there?
No, and maybe a better phrasing would be a targeted effort, not a targeted plan update. Because for LaPorte and Red Feather, if this were the scenario that you all gravitated toward, this would not include updating either the LaPorte plan or the Red Feather plan. So it wouldn't be looking at the vision. There wouldn't be a community survey involved. It would be looking at some focused implementation items or an aspect of the plan, but not revisiting the overall plan. Looking at vision and community, how community values or preferences or priorities have changed over time would really fall under that deep dive option, because once you open the door to that conversation, there needs to be some amount of follow through and then identifying policies and action items. And so it kind of gets a ball rolling that needs a bigger project.
And that could include an opinion survey and those kinds of things, which gets much more involved. Is that right?
That does get more involved. There are costs associated with that. We could draw a scope around that, though, and create a more limited effort that's really just looking at opinion surveys in a couple different areas without much additional planning effort. So that is an option as well. Leslie, was there anything that you wanted to add in? Okay.
Yes, forgive me, Commissioner.
Well, first, and to answer one of your questions about Tohosa Valley, sir, a big winter and stuff, they don't do much congregating in the winter because they're pretty much buried in. And I know they had some, even Rocky couldn't get in on the east side this last weekend, but I know they've talked about it. They have not even been asked to put something in formal writing because it's just an idea floated. So that's to address that question. But they're very tight and unified community that they want to be kind of not associated with Estes Valley. They're separate. Secondly, I'm curious about what a character area plan. What does that commit? What does that set in stone? And is that just I'm worried. What does that do for like setting things in stone or something?
Yeah. An analogy that I like to use, which maybe it helps me visualize it, is that the comprehensive plan takes kind of a watercolor approach to land use. A character area plan is more of like a fuzzy oil painting, and then a sub-area plan is like your detailed pen and ink or acrylics. So it's a level of kind of provides a level of certainty related to land use. So character area plan falls somewhere in between. It's a little bit more specific than the land use guidance and direction in the comprehensive plan. It's more context-based around the area. It can include a description of the type of character the community is trying to achieve in terms of the look and feel of the community. It doesn't get so specific to say what types of building materials are appropriate or architectural styles, things like that. But it does provide some guidance related to what types of land uses are and aren't appropriate in an area, and an overall vision for an area for the community. It's usually just a few pages long and very illustrative in nature, but with some descriptive words that kind of describe what's desired. And it's really a nice companion piece for planning commission or for you as county commissioners if you're reviewing a development proposal in an area to see if it aligns to the community expectation in that area.
Further comments or questions? We're approaching the 2:30 hour. It appears to me, colleagues, that we're not going to conclude this discussion in the next 2 minutes. I have suggested that the approach on the right would be something that I would encourage, but I know we all need to agree, of course, and maybe with further clarification, if we go down that path, what exactly are we talking about with targeted? And then with the Livermore folks, I think we have some homework to do there about what are character area plans and what are the pros and cons, what are the benefits, and regarding that other slide, my opinion is I think all of that stuff that's on there is some stuff that we agreed with. I guess I'd like to better understand the dark sky update because I thought we had something in our land use code pertaining to dark sky standards, and it sounds like earlier and I think there's something Commissioner Shattuck McNally has been advocating for with new construction maybe is something. Could you speak to that very quick?
Yes, yeah, briefly. So we do have lighting standards in our code. They do go a long way to protect the night sky from light pollution. There is more that we could do that is considered best practice in other communities, particularly communities that include a national park or around wilderness areas. So there is a step further we could go. There's also the opportunity for greater public kind of communication, outreach, education at the same time.
So, colleagues, do you have any thoughts on how do you want to proceed on this, or should we add this higher up on the agenda next? Well, actually, you folks won't be here next Monday, so how do we want to proceed? Because it's pretty much 2:28.
Commissioners, I'm wondering if the targeted approach that was described on the character plans, I wonder if you might flesh out the scope very specifically so that both the commissioners and the public might understand exactly what that means and what it does not mean, so that we don't create expectations in the community. And we won't meet next week, but that'll give you a couple of weeks to come back maybe with that information, share it ahead of time, give you all a chance to take a look at it and see if that is what you're talking
Good
about as
idea.
well.
Thank you for that suggestion, Lorenda. Colleagues, are you good with that idea, that suggestion?
Yes, I think this is an important conversation, Mr. Chair. I'm very sensitive to the workload for this wonderful, amazing team, and I want to make sure the expectations are set, but also we have some really public-facing things coming up, and I just want to make sure we're thinking about it and not kind of rushing a decision, so.
I 100% agree. Yes, Ms. Ellis.
Yes,
Leslie.
and similar to what Lorenda said, I think if we can get general agreement that this is the direction to go in, and then Rebecca and her team can probably do a bit more work on fleshing out, in particular, those targeted plans and possibly the scope around some of these other items as well, just so that there's good clarity on what the team will work on, and that there's capacity to do it all in addition to the existing projects that are on the list, and then we could come back and confirm. It'll probably be early March, actually, but at least that gives some fairly good preliminary direction to the team to begin work on these items.
Commissioner Stevens, thumbs up or thumbs down? Sure, why not? And also, one last point, and then we could spend 30 seconds on a community development update and SEPR update. And that is, tentatively, we have discussed having some kind of community conversation up in Livermore, offered some dates, the end of February, commissioners. So if we are able to do that, and they've offered the Livermore Community Church as one possible location, that should help inform further conversations on if they're ready for a Livermore character area plan. I hope that somewhat speaks to your point. Well, great. You've got negative 30 seconds to tell us.
And I do have one critical update for you all, so I will take that negative 30 seconds. Excuse me, I did want to let you all know the deadline to determine completeness for the Thornton 1041 permit application was last week, February 1st. We have issued a letter to the City of Thornton deeming their application complete. That does not imply, compliance with any of the standards or that we've fully reviewed the plan, but it does mean that the items that were required on the submittal checklist and that are necessary for us to complete our review are sufficient. So our review has begun of the Thornton Pipeline project, and we will be working to coordinate with all of you hearing dates and working to get those officially scheduled and noticed out to the public by March 2nd, I believe is the deadline for public notice.
Thank you, Rebecca. So we can anticipate Planning Commission and County Commissioner hearings March and April, is that correct?
Yes, most likely in April. Mid to late April is when we are hoping to begin the Planning Commission and County Commissioner hearings, but we're taking a close look at schedule and availability right now.
Thank you kindly. Is there anything else, Rebecca?
I'll just note for your 3 p.m. land use hearing today, there's an error in the packet. Please disregard everything past page 119. That's old information that was not intended to be included in the packet.
And that is page 119 in the electronic version.
In the electronic version,
The
yes.
hard copy version is correct.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Well done. Leslie, is there anything you'd like to share?
I do not. Thank you. Good afternoon,
Okay.
Commissioners.
We appreciate you, colleagues, all of you. At 2:33 p.m., we are adjourned. Not too bad.